Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome! I am your host, Scott Wurzbacher, and today we're going to hear a story about the adventure that can happen when you follow your heart. Our guest is Carolin Rathbun, a life and business coach, writer, and copywriter, and the mother of 2 young adults. As a coach, Carolin helps people create a life and business where happiness becomes their measure of success and their hearts lead the way. She spent a lifetime living in Toronto, Canada, but recently gave up her home and almost all of her belongings to follow her own heart and embark on a lifelong trip to travel the world. Carolin's world tour has only just begun, and today we have the honor of speaking to her and to her heart as she is on her journey. Carolin, welcome to the campfire.
Thank you so much, Scott. I'm so grateful and excited to talk with you today. And I love your podcast. I've listened to a number of the episodes so far, and I'm going to listen to all of them. I used to do a lot of camping with my family as a kid, and the campfire was one of my favorite parts. So I'm so excited to be at the campfire with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Carolin. Yeah, it's so fun to sit around the fire and just share stories, and that's what we're going to do today. But boy, you are on a journey, and it has just been so fun to watch. I got to ask, and for the listeners, where are you today?
Today, I am in Lisbon, Portugal. I've been on this journey, as you said. I gave up my apartment. I gave up almost all of my belongings, and 5.5 months ago, mid-August, this is now near the end of January, I've been traveling and just following my heart and seeing where it leads me.
5 months so far.
Yeah, 5.5, almost 6.
Yeah. So can you take us back? Where are some of the places that you've been over the last 5 months?
Oh yeah, well, I started in London, and it was at the time when Canadians still had to quarantine. So I spent, 10 days in quarantine when I landed, and then some time in London. And then I went, that's sort of really when my trip started, as after London. Well, no, it started in London too. The big journey for me, I think, really started in Wales. I had actually been planning a trip to go to Wales just before the pandemic started. Mm-hmm. So I was still wanting to go, and I was in my head questioning whether the timing of that was right, because I wanted to go in the spring or the summer, and this was now almost October, but it still felt right. And the more I was in my head trying to figure out where to go, I just couldn't plan it. So once I went into my heart and thought, where do I really want to be? And it became, go back to the original plan of 5 weeks in Wales, doesn't matter where. It all fell into place. So I did 5 weeks in Wales. I rented a car, drove all over Wales, stayed in a number of various accommodations, some really cool accommodations. Then I went to Leeds, and then I went to north of Scotland near Inverness in Findhorn. And then I went to Birmingham, stayed 6 weeks in the Cotswolds, and then back to London for the holidays, and then to Portugal for New Year's.
Yeah, and some of these places have just been like lifelong dreams for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Wales, it had kind of been in the back of my mind, I guess, a little bit. But what really got me thinking about Wales is I watched this program called Cabins in the Wild on Netflix. And I love architecture. I love clever design. So this was a design show about tiny homes, and it was a design competition. They had to build these tiny homes on trailer beds, and they had to be able to be transported on the roads in Wales, which are not big roads. And they all had to have something to do with Wales. So they were all placed somewhere within Snowdonia National Park. And it was so incredibly beautiful. I knew I had to go there. And in fact, I looked up, can I stay in one of these homes that were in the show? And I ended up finding one that had been purchased by someone, and it was put in the most beautiful location. And I spent 9 nights in this tiny home
Oh,
on the top of
wow.
the hill looking at Snowdonia National Park. And if you watch the show, it's called The Slate Cabin. Beautifully designed. It had everything you could wish for in a home, and the view was outstanding. I've stayed in a refurbished cow shed.
A
I stayed
refurbished cow
in,
shed.
yeah, this couple had bought a farm and they were refinishing all the outbuildings,
Oh,
and
yeah.
this was incredible. This, definitely could have lived there. It was a luxurious accommodation. It used to be a cow shed,
Wow.
and they
Yeah.
kept enough of the original features that you knew you were in this what was formerly a cow shed. Another place that had great views. I stayed in a place that was a shipping container. It's 2 shipping containers put together. It was originally made into a hostel, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, open kitchen, living, dining room. I had it to myself. I stayed in, somebody converted their garage into a really cute cottage. I was 6 weeks there. And I've stayed in B&Bs, and I've also done some house sitting, which you look after someone's house and their pet, and you stay for free. So I've done that a couple of times too.
Carolyn, how are you finding these? These are very unique places. How are you finding these places and getting connected with the owners to be able to stay for such long periods of time?
A couple of them have been Airbnb.
Okay.
Some of them, it's again, it's following my heart, and it's just finding, like, where can I stay in Wales? And there was a website called Best of Wales, and so I found I found some of them there, and then just other accommodations were just just searching Expedia or whatever, it just seemed to come up, but I always listen to my heart, and whenever I get a yes, it's like, yeah, okay, I'm going there. And I've been testing myself so many times, like the little cottage I found in the Cotswolds was the first one that came up on Airbnb when I decided on what area I was going to. And I thought, well, I'm not going to pick the first one. Maybe there's something better. So I spent probably a couple of hours looking at all these sorts of cottages in the Cotswolds, but that was the one I kept thinking about. But it's not like that one. So,
Yeah.
so I ended up going with the very first one I saw. So I got quite friendly with the woman who owned it. And she was telling me she hadn't had that cottage listed for 6 months. She had hurt her foot, and she listed it the night before I saw it. And I booked it for the month. And then I decided I want to stay another couple of weeks. And I looked online, and December was booked. So I thought, oh, I guess I can't. But I thought, I'll just ask her. And she said, no, I've just decided not to book it over Christmas. So yes, please stay another 2 weeks. So
Wow.
that was there's just been so many serendipities along the way.
Yeah,
that,
serendipities.
yeah.
And you said that you've been testing yourself. I'm curious if you could elaborate on what you meant by that.
Well, it's my head. It's me getting in my own way. It's kind
Mhm.
of, thinking, is this the best idea? And my heart feels like my soul is just going, okay, we've shown you, but if you want to do your due diligence, go ahead. And I come back to my original plan, which was, so I'm getting to the point more and more is just like, just listen to your heart.
It's so funny. I love that you said, okay, if you feel like you need to do your due diligence, it's like your heart giving your head permission to do what it needs to do, but your heart knows.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's even, deeper than my heart too. Like, I think your heart is the doorway to your soul. So I think it's, my soul voice, my inner wisdom coming through my heart, but it feels aligned with my heart. Yeah. And every time it feels like the right place to go.
Yeah.
And I feel like when it's time to leave. And I've loved every place I've been. Like the saying, home is where your heart is. Like,
Yes.
I follow my heart to the place. It feels fantastic while I'm there, and then it feels ready to go. And it's like, oh, I'm so glad I had that experience. I got to have this place as my home for a little while, and now I get to go somewhere else. And I know that I'm sort of, deciphering when it comes time to get my own place, whenever that will be. I'll have pulled all these ideas from everywhere I've stayed to create something interesting.
Yeah. And so you're 5.5 months on the road, and this trip has been largely unplanned. It's largely been you
Yeah.
just following your heart.
Yes, I have no idea when I'm going home. No idea if I'll go home for permanently. I have no idea how long I'll be gone. I have no idea where I'm going next. Like, I landed in Lisbon, and I mean landed, I took a taxi.
Right.
um, I was in another part of Portugal, not far from here, and I came to Lisbon 2 days ago. And at first I thought, 1 week, and I kept hearing this nudge, make it two, make it two. And, yeah, I'm going to extend for 2 weeks. After that, I have an idea of where I think I want to go. I've felt into where I want to go. But again, when I was trying to find accommodations, that it was getting a little tricky. So I think I was meant to be here for 2 weeks, not one, which is why I wasn't figuring that part out. So it's really step by step. I really don't have a definite plan, which is strange for me because years ago, I was someone who planned things to the T.
I think it's strange for a lot of people. It's because it's incredibly inspiring, but also just like this idea that, you've already been gone for 5.5 months and you just said yourself that like, you don't know when you're going home. And so like,
Yeah.
I think the first thing, and I had actually, cause you and I have known each other for a couple of years now. And so just to backtrack a little bit, like what's so cool about this is that you and I first met in a mastermind group about redefining what it means to be a success. And so we spent a lot of time, a lot of it was like spiritual work, trying to redefine like what it means to be successful. But from day one, when I first met you, you were talking about this dream that you had to be able to travel the world. And it was something that you were kind of starting to prepare for. And then COVID hit and the whole thing got derailed for about a year. But it's just like, for me, it's so cool to see that you've been able to like, endure some struggle in getting here, but now you're like on this trip and you're doing it. But you're 5.5 months in, and I think my question, like, I love to travel. But there's always, when I'm on a trip, there's always this sense of like, at some point I'm going to go home. And
Yeah.
you're on this sort of extended trip. So I'm kind of curious, like, what is home? You sold your home in Canada. What is home?
Yeah, home is everywhere I land, like everywhere my heart tells me to go. Like I was saying, it just feels like home. When I was in the cowshed, it was like, oh, I could live here. And I was like, wait a minute, I am living here.
Yeah.
This is home for right now. This isn't a holiday. This is my life. And that took me probably a couple of months to really get into my system, like especially when I was in London, because I'd been to London a couple of other times. I had to keep reminding myself, I'm not going home. Like, so what does home what's my definition of home now? It's become home is where my heart is. It is every location I go to feels right in that moment. And then it feels right when it's time to move on. Like I've said, I extended the little cottage. I thought I would, a month would be good there. But when I got there, I thought, no, I'm not ready to leave yet. So 2 more weeks felt great. And then the next place fell into place. And it's just been this journey of more and more and more trusting my heart, trusting my inner wisdom, trusting that I am always supported and everything will always work out.
Can you talk about like what that feels like the emotion and the feeling involved with like developing that sense that you truly are home right where you are?
Yeah, that took a long time to
Yeah.
get to this place. And it was baby step after baby step. And it was working through fear. It was a lot of working through the what ifs. What if I'm lonely? What if I get sick? What if I get hurt? What if I run out of money? All the what ifs. So when I had answers to all those things, so what's the worst thing that could happen? What would I do? And then once I figured out all those kinds of things, and then it got to, well, maybe I'll try this for 2 years. And then when that felt good in my body, I thought, well, the truth is I'd rather do more than 2 years. So what if I did it for 3 years? And then that felt good. Well, what if I did it for 5 years? And then when that felt comfortable, it was like, well, why do I have to put a time frame on it?
Yeah.
And then I think the final piece was, I don't have to have a plan. Like if at any point in time I want to come home, I just come home. Like I don't have to stick to anything. And there's a number of things I've done to help me get comfortable with listening to my heart and my intuition. And that's a lot of that started the first trip I took, which was right after I separated from my husband. And I thought, I have waited my whole life to travel. I am not waiting a second more. And, I had been waiting for the right time. I'd been waiting for the right person, I'd been waiting for enough money, all the things we wait for that we use as excuses. And I'm not waiting for a minute more. And I went 5 weeks to Italy. The first 2 weeks, a good friend of mine came with me. The next 2 weeks, I had booked a pottery course in a little tiny town in the middle of Italy with an American teacher, and I knew there'd be American students. So I knew I wouldn't have the language barrier, but I would be with people who had similar interests. And we had some excursions and some free time. And then the 5th week, I was on my own. So in each of those, there were sort of baby steps. With my friend, it was, getting comfortable being in another country and having someone with me to figure out the train system. And then in the pottery course, it was, who am I navigating the world on my own? And that was a taste of that, because I'm I'm an introverted person, and at the time, very shy. And I've grown out of that as well, the more I've come back into myself. And then the final week, though, that was a lot of learning, really starting to hone my intuition and following trips too. And I'd go on my own. I've done a lot of solo travel. I traveled a lot with my daughter. I've traveled with some family, my son. But when I'm on my own, that has been a real teacher as far as helping me hone my intuition. Like, I remember one time I was walking down a little town in Italy, going down the cobblestone streets, and something in my gut, intuition, instinct, whatever, said, don't go down that road. And I didn't question it. Like, so often we question that kind of thing. We talk ourselves out of it. And I just okay, I have no idea what was down that road. It doesn't matter. I was just, okay, I'm going to go this way. And, that's been a big teaching of a learning experience for me. And I'm so in tune with that now that I just trust it.
Yeah, it sounds like you're literally being guided by your own intuition, and it sounds like that's something that you've had to develop. I love that you talked about the baby steps and the fears that you had to overcome. And because I want to go back to 4 things that you said and see if we could check off each one for people listening, because I think those 4 fears are the same 4 fears that every one of us is going to have. You said, what if I'm lonely? What if I get sick? What if I run out of money? What if I get hurt? And you said through baby steps, you've worked your way through each one of those. What was the key?
I think it's so what if I did get hurt? What if I got hurt? Are people just going to walk past me on the street? No. I'm able to have conversation. Most people in Europe speak English, so someone's going to be able to hear you. I have been sick. I have been hurt on holidays. I've gone to the doctor in Switzerland. I've been wounded. My leg got scratched up. I was looking down when I was looking up when I should have been looking down, and I stepped off a curb and scratched open my leg. It's kind of working through. So what if? So what if I run out of money and have nowhere to live? Well, I have loving family. Someone will take me in, even if I have to couch surf for a while. I have skills that I could come back and get a job. So, okay, so that's not so fearful anymore. What if I feel lonely? Well, then I, join a group and, meet like-minded people. And that's an interesting thing too, because I don't feel lonely. I've gotten to a place where I'm so comfortable in my own intuition, in my own inner self, and knowing that I always have the answers, that I don't feel alone. I always feel guided. So I don't feel lonely. I think feeling alone and feeling lonely are 2 different things. And I don't feel lonely. There's occasions where I think, it'd be nice to be sharing this experience with somebody.
Right.
But, I've got friends that I talk to and share the experience that way. I've got friends who are talking about coming over to meet me at different places. So I've got this core group of friends where I'm like, okay, I'm going here next. Anybody want to join me? And with COVID, it's more difficult. But I think once things open up a little bit more, I've got 2 friends right now who are saying, yeah, I'm coming. So,
That's awesome.
So I think that's going to be really fun.
Guess what? You're sharing your experience with us right now. So
Exactly.
This is fantastic. And also for those listening, because, you are a life and a business coach. So this is, you're doing your work as you go. So it's not like you're just on an unlimited holiday where there's no income. Like, this is, you're making it happen as you go.
Right. And right from the beginning, when I started my business, I got to the core of what do I really want my business to look like? And I knew it had to travel with me. And part of those baby steps were I would travel 5 to 6 weeks every spring and every fall, and I take my business with me. And on those occasions, because it was a limited time frame and we could move a little faster when we traveled, I would, spend a couple of days in each city, move to the next one. And the majority of my clients are in North America, so it works out beautifully to be here. I can explore all day, be back at 5 o'clock, and it's noon Eastern. So that worked out really well. Now, because this is my life and I'm not on the go all the time, I don't have to be on the go. I'm finding that spending a couple of solid days working and then 3 days just focused on touring, that's working well. I also don't, because I'm a woman traveling alone, I also don't tend to go out at night. So that's often when I'll do some work or post things on social media or something like that.
Yeah. And in terms of the baby steps, like I think you said something that's really helpful. You said that, you didn't just sell everything and go. Like you actually had some kind of smaller experiences to essentially prove to yourself that you could do this. You said you took like a 5-week trip and brought your business with you on that 5-week trip. So, and even for some people, 5 weeks might even seem daunting, but like the point is you could start with a weekend, then you can start with a week, and then you can go to 5 weeks. And, it's like kind of building up that muscle. And now here you are, like essentially on an indefinite, like working trip, which is just, I mean, so many people have that dream and you're living it.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. I do have to, of course, stick within governmental guidelines and things like that. For instance, I'm just here as a tourist. I don't have a visa for any particular country. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Schengen zone, in case your listeners aren't. It's basically Europe plus a few other countries, and you can only stay a collective 90 days within a consecutive 180. So basically 3 months out of 6. So I have to stick within that. I would love that rule not to be there, and I would just stay in Europe indefinitely moving around, but I am going to have to hop in and out. So there are guidelines that I have to follow in that regard. But that's, if that's what I have to do this, then I'm okay with that. And maybe at one point I'll decide to get a visa and stay somewhere.
Sure. Well, you called this a world tour, and I am just curious. I got so many of the things I want to get into with you, but what other countries are on your list, or even continents?
Pretty much every European country. I would love to go to Croatia, Australia, Slovenia. It looks really interesting. I'd love to go to Russia. Mm-hmm. That one I would probably do on a tour. I would love to go to New Zealand, Bali at some point, like just wherever. Like it's just going to be fully heart-led.
You've got some time ahead.
Got some time. And that's the other thing. I'm slow traveling. So doing this during COVID is I'm able to do it because I'm going really slowly. And I've decided that at this point, at least, I may change my mind, or my heart may change my mind. I'm going to stay 3 months in one country. So I'm not having to test every few weeks to get on a plane to go somewhere else. So yeah. And I also have England was fantastic. They were giving away for free the rapid flow tests. So I was testing 2 times a week. I would test anytime I was going to move from one town to the next because I didn't want to bring anything with me. So that's been a lot of like great peace of mind to be able to travel knowing I'm not contagious.
Yeah, and that's important in the world that we've got today. Carolin, I'd like to go back to sort of what sparked all this, because you've had so much growth. Like you're on this amazing trip and you're in such a good place and you're being led by your heart, and all of that is, that's been developed, and that's something that has grown inside of you. But certainly something like this usually it starts somewhere, right? So I kind of want to talk about that call to adventure. And if I can, I was checking out your website and your coaching practice website. And right at the very top of the website, it says, in the span of 3 years, my kids both moved out, my marriage ended, my mother no longer knew me, and my father died. Every role I identified with was completely gone or drastically different. Who was I now? I felt utterly lost and very alone. Carolin, that's powerful stuff. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, that span of those few years just kept knocking me off my feet. Like it was, well, after my divorce, it was like, who am I not as a wife? After my mom no longer knew me, like that was like heartbreaking beyond belief. Then I lost my dad, and I just really been getting to know him. My sisters and I were so close to my mom, and my dad was always, the typical middle class family of the time, stay at home mom and working dad. And so we never really got to know him. But the gift of my mom's Alzheimer's was we got to know my dad those last few years. And so, it was losing him. And then my kids both grown and off to university. I was losing all these roles that I had so identified with. I had been a stay-at-home mom and, wife and daughter. And so once we start losing these roles, and I think, people find this too when they've really identified with their career and they get downsized or they retire, it's like, who am I now? If I'm not that thing I thought I was, like I was so identified with that, who am I? And we play these roles so well, like we develop our own idea of what that role is and we sink into them and we think, well, a good mother does this, a good father does this, good spouse does this, good employee does this, a good daughter or son does this. And we start to hide pieces of ourselves so we can fit what we think and what we've been told. And, sometimes people say, oh, you're really great at this, you should do this. So we hide something of ourselves. Well, I guess I'm supposed to do that because somebody said I should. Yeah. Especially people who mean a lot to us, our parents and our teachers. And so it became this real journey of who am I? And travel was always one of those things. Like since I was 16, I thought I really want to travel. And when I was 19, I had wanted to go backpacking around Europe, but I couldn't find anybody to do it with me. And I was too afraid to do it alone. And so I got to this point in my life where it was like, I'm not waiting for anybody else. If they want to come with me, great, but I'm still going, whether they want to or not. And it was just kind of this coming back into myself and coming back into my heart, because that's where our heart always knows and our soul always knows what's best for us. And I think our heart is the doorway to our soul. So our soul only wants what's best for us. And we hear that in our heart. We're constantly given messages. We hear lyrics in a song. We hear, read something in a book. Our emotions speak to us, but we ignore them. And when we're happy, we're in alignment with our soul. And when we're not, we're doing the opposite. So I started looking at all that sort of thing. And it became a journey from recognizing these messages I was getting, and we all get, noticing them, believing them, then trusting them. And then now I'm at a place where I just know it. Like there's no question. It's just a knowing now.
Yeah, it's really inspiring. And it's so interesting, like the experience that you went through, you found yourself kind of, like you said, identifying with all of these roles and then asking yourself the question, who am I? And in order to find out the answer to that question, you sold your house, got rid of most of your belongings, and essentially shed all of those identities as well.
Well, I want to correct you there, because that's the byproduct of finding myself.
Yes.
That wasn't how I found myself.
Yeah.
I had already done that. So that shedding all that was easy because I'd already done it. Like when the hardest part is the decision to do it. And it's just before you make the decision to do it. It's that, oh, can I really do this? Is this really what I want to do? Because if I do this, things are going to start to change.
Okay.
So I had done that so many times that every time got a little easier and a little easier. And then when it got to the point of all those what ifs, and settling into 2 years and 5 years, and why do I have to have a timeline? I'll just come home when I'm ready. Getting rid of my stuff was probably some of the easiest things I've ever done. Like I was just ready to let it go. I didn't need it. I was going.
I'm glad you made that distinction because it is a big difference. Like It wasn't in that doing that you've made the decision first, and because of the decision, you were then able to let go of those things.
Yes.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
hearing you say. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
it's a big distinction. It wasn't that gave everything up and then found yourself. It was flip-flopped. And
Right.
I'm glad that you made that distinction. So
Yeah.
here's the question. You've been asking yourself, who am I? And I want to ask you, who is Carolyn?
Hmm. How do you define it? And I think that's the problem. We try to define who we are. And I think I am just someone who follows her heart. And I think when we do that, we are connected with our soul, and then we're living our purpose. Like we're showing up in the world fully as ourselves.
It's such a great answer because and I didn't mean to do it on purpose, but like I'm trying to pull you back into an identity, and that's exactly what
Yeah.
it's exactly what you're doing, right? Is like just recognizing I'm someone who follows my heart. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have an identity. Like even, calling myself a writer and a copywriter and a
Right.
coach and I think when people hear those, they think, oh, I know what a coach is, I know
Yeah.
what a writer does, I know
Yeah.
what a copywriter is. And yes, there's a sameness about those, but I think what attracts us to one coach over another or one book over another, um, is the human, the spirit, the soul, the
Yeah.
essence of the person coming through. That's the decision we make. It's the feeling you feel in your heart when you're looking at, this is what I teach in copywriting. Like I help people create websites that attract their dream clients, and what you're doing is you're speaking to their heart. Yes, people who are looking for a specific kind of coaching, they're all looking for a coach, and they're all looking for someone to solve their problem. But where does that problem originate? It originates in their heart. They have a feeling that something is missing. So when they look at a website and they feel a connection, that's what they're connecting with. It's not the identity of the coach, it's the essence of the person.
Well, so speaking of writing and copywriting, and also speaking of these ideas that you've been living in the last 5.5 months, and before that, you've been listening to your heart, and you've talked about how the heart is essentially the gateway to the soul.
Mhm.
And you wrote a book to help people do that. And for those listening, you can't see what I'm holding up, but Carolyn wrote a book.
I got it too.
Oh yeah, we both have one. There you go. Love Notes from Your Soul. So this is a fabulous book that you wrote about a year or two ago, and I'd love to just hear a little summary about the book.
Yeah, it started as it was part of the whole journey. It was I was meditating every day, and one day, it was November 2019, this idea popped into my head, is because I was always asking my heart, asking my soul, asking whatever realms are out there, what do I need to know right now? And I was hearing things. You're right where you're meant to be. You are loved. Everything is perfect. Things like that. And it was so comforting. And early November 2019, this idea popped into my head to write these down and share them with people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really scary idea. It was an exciting idea. I thought, well, that would be really fun. But it was a really scary idea because for a number of reasons. One, I was only talking about business stuff. So all of a sudden, I'm going to start talking about your soul. That didn't seem in keeping with, how to write copy, how to bring your ideal client. So it was coming out of the spiritual closet.
I love that.
And then it was, I had also at one point done free writing prompts, and it was one a week, and I did it for almost 2 years. And that became a chore. And I didn't want to take on something, like my idea was share something every day. I thought that's a big ask because I knew how much doing it once a week was. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd also known that I jumped on ideas before and regretted it. So I thought I'm going to let this simmer because this is a big ask. And a couple of weeks later, it was still an exciting idea. And I thought, okay, well, what am I going to say? So I started writing down
Mm-hmm.
what I was hearing. And I think we all have this ability to hear what our soul is saying, but I was tuned in. I had gone through the steps to get to the point
Yeah.
where I was hearing who I was and getting inner wisdom. And so I started writing more down, and then I thought, well, is this just my inner wisdom? Who's going to want to hear this? And I realized when I was looking through them, this is wisdom for everyone. And my belief is we are like a collective of beings. We are a soul with a body rather than a body with a soul. And I think we're all this collective of souls. So I started realizing that this is wisdom for anybody. This isn't meant just for me. So I started putting them out. And I thought, does anybody want to hear this? So I started promoting it to mid-December for January start. And I had people signing up. And I had a number, already ready to go, but I had to keep up with it too. So one a year, people can still get this on my website. So you get one love note a year. These are love notes from your soul. One love note a day for an entire year. And then November 2020, the idea popped into my head, put these in a book and put it in a book by Christmas. So, so okay. And so I just picked 52. It was actually 53. So it would be one a week. And then I added my photographs to it, as I was always taking photographs on my travels. And what I've been noticing is I was drawn to pictures of windows and doors. And I was also noticing the more whole I was becoming, the more my photographs were changing. So first I was drawn to windows and doors that were closed, shut tight, peeling paint. And gradually I was taking pictures of doors and windows that were partly open, and then gradually fully open. And then I was realizing I was taking pictures from the inside looking out.
Wow.
So some of these pictures of windows and doors are in the book as well. So, so if anybody listening wants to get some free ones, they're on my website, and the book is on Amazon.
Yeah. So these windows and doors and kind of the condition that they're in and the perspective that you're taking them from essentially took shape like as you went through that process. That was so profound.
Yeah. And I wasn't looking for that. I wasn't looking for, I feel bad and sad, and this window looks like what represents me. It was, I think that, your soul is always trying to speak to you. So I was noticing what I was noticing without controlling it. So I would be drawn to something. Oh, that's nice. So I'd take a picture of it. So it was me watching the evolution of my inner self through the outer representation of the windows and doors.
Yeah.
Yesterday I was walking through Lisbon and I was thinking, what am I drawn to these days? Like, I'm not interested in the windows and doors as much as I was. And I realized yesterday walking through Lisbon, I was taking pictures of entire buildings. Like I was like, the whole
the whole thing. Well, Love Notes from Your Soul is a fabulous book. It's great for that daily inspiration. You need a nudge and some help kind of listening to your soul and hearing those messages and learning to trust your intuition. Carolin, this has been so amazing to hear about your journey. I can't wait to continue to follow you and see where you go. I mean, you're just getting started 5.5 months in, and, this is an indefinite thing. And, you've shared with the listeners today that home truly is where the heart is. And that's just, we've all heard that before, but it's just so nice to be able to really understand and feel what that's like for somebody. I want to ask you if there are people that are, kind of experiencing maybe some of the things that you experienced with the role identification and, just like maybe having trouble hearing that inner voice. What advice do you have for them? I
would say start just noticing what's around you. What are the messages that you're getting? I used to do one of the things that really helped me, tune in and trust that I was being helped, that I had the messages I need. Because so often we go to our friends and what should I do? And we take their advice and, I don't know, that didn't feel right. And I don't know. So you ask somebody else and what should I do? And they give advice. And so we have all the answers inside. And I don't think people need to travel to find the answers. I think travel offers a lot of really great, like numerous things. But I think if anytime we're looking to somebody else for the answer or something else for the answer, you don't need to, that you have the answers inside. So one of the things that I used to do, and I still do, and that really helped me, were intuitive walks. And I know I've shared some with you before, Scott, but what I would do is like be conscious while I'm walking, because so often we're just walking and we're like, oh, there's something. We're in our head. What do I have to do today? And I've got this problem, and we're just in our head trying to figure it out. And while we're walking, though, our eyes are being drawn to different things. And if you're not conscious of them, you're not noticing what your eyes being drawn to. So I would go on these intuitive walks where I would be noticing what I was noticing. So I'd be walking along, my eye would be drawn to something, and I think, what do you have to say to me? What's the message here? And if it was nothing, I'd okay, keep walking, my eye would be drawn to something else. And what message is there? And inevitably there would be something that would pop to mind, either a memory or like a little message I would kind of hear in my head, or a feeling or something, which would remind me of something else. And I would just let myself notice these things. And it's what I use now when I'm out for walks, in a new city. It's do I need to go that way? No, doesn't feel right that way. Okay, go another way. Where am I going next? Okay, this is where I want to go next. So that's a real good, an easy thing to practice that you don't have to leave your home other than go for a walk.
Well, it's interesting because as I had pulled out your book, I thought to myself, I'm just going to flip through here while we're on the call and pick a page and just for listeners, just give them an example. But the page that I picked, it was page 49. And that page says, trust your intuition. It's the one way I'm speaking to you. Love your soul. And that fits perfectly with what you just said. Carolin, at some point, they are going to make a movie about your life. And I want to know who the actress is going to be that's going to play you in that movie.
Well, I love that you ask people this. And it's funny, a few years ago, I had this conversation with some girlfriends of mine, and they unanimously said that Emma Thompson would be the person to play me.
I love it. Emma Thompson. Okay, what's the name of your movie going to be?
Freedom Within, the courage to trust your heart.
Wow. Freedom Within, the courage to trust your heart. I love that so much. Carolin, thank you so much for being here. For those listening, I hope you've been inspired today as much as I have. I hope that Carolin's story has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell or need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thank you so much for listening. Carolin, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Scott. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I always love talking with you.